It is March Madness here in stores, and both our men's and women's teams are still dancing, advancing on to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2014, and I'm sure we know what happened then. We're going to break down all the madness, but until then, welcome back to Under Review. I'm Mahn.
And I'm Inesta. Let's get into it.
So the madness began this weekend when UConn faced off with Vermont. They received a 2 seed going into the tournament. It was quite a dominant win for the Huskies, 95-52. Aaliyah Edwards had quite a career day, scoring 28 points, all around really dominant performance for the Huskies. How important was it for them to have a confidence boosting game in the first round?
I think it was really important for them to come out hot in like the UConn that we all know. Obviously, being UConn, we want them to go far. They should be going far, but just to start off this way, I feel like it was a really good boost for the team, especially with AZ coming back and starting for the first time. I think with Aaliyah also, I just think it was an overall great day and a great start to March Madness, and then they continued that against Baylor too.
Yeah, and I really think they talked about they actually had fun. I know a lot of their games are so stressful, but this was a game that they could really enjoy it fully, and which is very difficult to do with the pressure of March, as we've seen. Then we moved on to our next opponent of Baylor. I was a little nervous when this bracket came out and I saw Baylor there, just with how that game ended the last time we played them, only winning by 1 point. And Baylor was down by a good amount against Alabama, so a lot of people were predicting that to be the opponent, but they made a historic comeback and faced us in this game, and it was definitely not an easy one starting off. What were your thoughts originally with that first half of how close it was and how Baylor was really leading?
That first half, I think for the men's and women's team, the first halves have been a little bit scary, but the way that they responded in the second half is really what matters. Baylor really came out. They were hitting a lot of shots, and we really just started off slow, but I think a huge thing that turned the game around for us was AZ Fudd, scoring 22 points. This was really her comeback performance, and say that, she's really healthy, she's really back. I think that week in between the Big East and the March Madness tournament really was kind of key to her performance and her just coming back out and being who we all know that she is. And I just think that second half performance was what we really needed to stop Baylor. But I do give credit to them as, they were playing at Gamble Pavilion, which is very hard atmosphere, especially if you're UConn. So I just think it was a great overall performance.
Yeah, I think AZ Fudd really showed out, and I think if there was any player that was going to step up that game, I think seeing AZ do it is so comforting to, I think, fans, because we haven't had her for so long, and she's almost proving to be a missing piece and such a secret weapon that we didn't have all season. People weren't able to scout her for a good amount of time because she just came back, and she's really starting to hit her high points, and I think her potential goes even higher than this. So I hope she can stay on fire in March, and we have so many other key components that can step up too, because Lou hasn't been scoring as much as she has in certain games, and some people score more when others aren't, and I think if everyone's on, we can really take on super tough opponents. But I think you made an interesting point about the men's and the women's both being that second half team in those games. I think one of the main struggles with that, though, is you can't get down too much in the first. Was there anything from watching that game that you think UConn needs to improve on to go into the next?
I think they just have to start off strong because, yes, the second half performances are great and they're hugely clutch for this kind of tournament, but as we're going into these deeper runs, there's going to be more top seeds, and, with UConn, we maybe have Tennessee and Virginia Tech ahead of us for the women's. I just think they have to start off strong and get the rebounds and just find the opportunities to get to the basket from the beginning and maybe kind of just get it together a little bit. But I do think with the way they performed in the second half that it's totally doable to have these first halves, but I don't think not in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think they also really need to stay composed. I think they did a great job of doing that against Baylor, because obviously these foul calls mean a lot more when it's in March, because you either win or you go home. And I know Leah Edwards, even last year, was getting in a lot of foul trouble in these later tournament games. And someone as essential as her, we really need on the court. So I think being able to deal with the calls, dealing with the controllables versus the uncontrollables, because obviously some things don't go your way, but arguing with the ref isn't going to do much about it. So I think they did a really good job in that Baylor game of taking what was happening and still doing what they do best. And then another thing is offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
It's just kind of been something that we haven't had the most of all season. And defensive rebounds just has really been a lot higher. And I know that's like that with a lot of teams, but you can definitely have a competitive advantage if you're the one offensively rebounding. Now we're moving on. UConn versus Ohio State this Saturday. Dorka Juhasz's alma mater, and she's played with quite a few of these players. What do you think going into this game?
You know, I don't know a ton about Ohio State's current team, but I do know they've been floating around the rankings. They've made some upsets in the regular season, but I really don't think it's about the matchup. I just think it's about UConn focusing on themselves and being able to play. I mean, of course, Dorka Juhasz being from Ohio State in her previous seasons, I'm sure she's always wanted to play Ohio State again, but maybe in the Sweet 16 is not what she totally imagined. But I feel like if there's anyone that's going to thrive in this game, it'll be her because, yes, she knows the team, but it's also she's playing for UConn now. She's got the blue jersey on. And I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, but I think UConn is going to have the advantage here.
I think it'll be super interesting as Dorka played against UConn on Ohio State, and now she kind of gets to do the reversal. I also know that she got injured last year in the Elite Eight, so I think she really values these tournament games and being able to be there on the court with her team. I honestly agree with you on the fact that we're our biggest opponent right now. Ohio State is good, and I think they're one of the tougher teams that we're going to have to face before the Final Four or the championship game, but I think we can overcome them, and our win was a lot of a dominant win, and they're coming off of a thriller, and they beat UNC by only a couple points, so although that can fuel their adrenaline, I think coming off of a more stable win and not having to almost not be here, I think could help us out a lot, but it's really getting close with a lot of these
Everyone's
upsets.
Good now.
Yeah, everyone's good. Seeding doesn't mean as much as you think. And then, hopefully, if they overcome Ohio State, they will face either Tennessee or Virginia Tech. And I really don't know what of those two matchups I'd want because they both have pretty strong players. How do you think those could go down?
You know, when looking at both those teams, I feel like you would want to see Tennessee again because we've already played them this season, and we really haven't seen Virginia Tech at all. Honestly, like, from watching the rankings all season, Virginia Tech kind of emerged late, and it got them a 1 seed, so there's something there for them, and I just think with UConn going into this, they have to, Ohio State is first, and then you got to worry about the next, but, you know, maybe Tennessee, I really don't know, but like you said earlier, the opponents don't really matter. It's UConn focusing on themselves. And whoever they play, they have to play. And it's just, you got to get to the Final Four.
I think Tennessee as a program has been a lot more experienced getting this far. I think this is Virginia Tech's first time being in the Sweet 16 for a while, but I definitely don't think that discredits them at all as they have a National Player of the Year candidate on their team. So I think facing either of these teams will be tough. And I think with Tennessee, especially based off that last game, a lot of composure will be needed because that was pretty heated. But I think either one is just something you're going to have to face, and it's going to make you stronger as a team. But I really do think we need to overcome Ohio State first. These are not too easy Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games, but that's the fun of it, I guess. A lot of upsets so far. I know we had a good amount of upsets last year, but a lot of upsets I would say I wasn't expecting. Partially because I didn't put them in my bracket, upsettingly. But first, Miami over Indiana. Cavendier twins, that was quite a shocker, a 1 seed falling. And then Ole Miss over Stanford. I was not expecting this. I know Stanford's been a little off this season, having a couple upsets, but a round of 32 upset was not what I was expecting. And then Princeton over NC State and Colorado over Duke. Which of these upsets surprised you the most or really changes the tournament the most?
You know, I feel like with the Stanford loss, I feel like that kind of makes a team like Iowa be like, okay, like, what is going on? They got the 1 seed over what could have potentially been Iowa, and I just think you're looking at the bracket and you're like, a 1 seed, yes, that's a great accomplishment for a program, but really, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, again, with Indiana, they came into the tournament being one of the top dogs, and now they're out of it. So I just think anything could happen. So, when people freak out about UConn not being a 1 seed, they're still in the tournament, and I think that's the difference.
I think so too, and you're going to have to face whoever the 1 seed, the 2 seed is, no matter what, so it really doesn't matter your seeding. I think Stanford was really surprising. I watched the last couple minutes of that game, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to go Stanford's way at all. It's upsetting to see, like, Haley Jones' career come to an end, especially with how many good players they had, but I think it was a reality check to everyone in the tournament. Like, they don't get a second. Like, you can't be like, oh, I want to fight. You can't. Like, it's just like you got to fight in that moment, and anyone could go down in any second.
Yeah.
Because Stanford is a good team, and Indiana is a good team, and I still think, regardless of those losses, they could have won the whole tournament if things went a little bit differently. So it really just depends how much you play in that game. Really cool, though, for Ole Miss to make it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
The coach's speech was actually so inspirational. I could listen to it every morning, and I would feel like I could accomplish anything. But, yeah, it's just really cool to see other teams on the come-up, and that women's basketball is so competitive. Has there been a favorite game you've watched so far this tournament?
I mean, I'm definitely very UConn-focused and biased, of course, for here. But, honestly, the environment at the Baylor game was being in that building. I think it was just amazing to see the team really come together, especially with AZ coming back. I just feel like the team felt a little bit complete, I mean, obviously, it's so sad to see Paige on the bench. I feel like recently you've been able to see, she's excited with all the underclassmen on the bench, but then, like, I just feel that she's got to be there, and it just sucks. It's not a good situation, but with watching the team and how they've been performing, it's very exciting, especially with the men's team, too. It's just a great environment here in Storrs right now.
And I think it's crazy thinking back to last March of how much Paige had an impact. It really shows how many people have been able to step up for her. And Aaliyah was even saying, we want to do this for her because we know how badly she wants to win. And I think it's kind of strengthened them as a team. But it is really hard to think about March without Paige Beckers, and I bet you it's really hard for her. She's taking a very mature perspective and helping her team and coaching on the sidelines. And I think it could really make a difference. Favorite game I've watched? Iowa versus Georgia. Georgia obviously has the old UCF coach and Diamond Battle, so it kind of felt like a flashback of UConn versus UCF. Very aggressive game, but Iowa did pull off the win, and Caitlin Clark continues to just be a generational player, and she comes up in such big moments, and she just continues to prove herself, and she's just honestly so entertaining to watch. So I'm excited to see more of her in the tournament, and if we ever end up facing them, I think it could honestly be a tough battle, because I know we faced them earlier this year, but I think she's just really on fire right now.
Different in March.
Yeah, as well as Monica. Like, they have, like, a good, balanced starting lineup.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about who we're kind of thinking for this Sweet 16, who we're thinking we're going to make it to the Elite Eight, and hopefully it'll be UConn too. First, South Carolina versus UCLA. Who do you think is going to win that matchup?
I feel like UCLA has been on fire recently, but then you go back to South Carolina, and it just feels like they're unbeatable. Like, with everything they've gone through, I don't know if you saw the press conference where Aaliyah Boston was like, oh, yeah, I remember that loss we had, and the one loss in her career or something like that.
At home.
Yeah. I just feel like they're unbeatable, but, if they get to the championship and UConn gets to the championship, you never know. But with UCLA, I feel like they've really emerged as a strong team, and I think they could definitely give South Carolina a run for their money.
I think against USF, South Carolina was really trailing in that first half. So if UCLA proves itself to be a first half team, they could get enough of a lead and be able to maintain that. I know they have a couple of tall girls, and that's what you need against South Carolina because they have such a big presence down low.
Very physical.
But South Carolina, you can just keep naming the players that can make an impact. So they're really able to switch in and out when someone's not on that game. So I think UCLA could do something big here, but they're going to have a phenomenal performance to beat South Carolina because they're very good at turning it around when they're down.
Yeah.
Notre Dame versus Maryland.
I think both teams are really solid. It's a really cool matchup actually. But I think with Maryland, with Diamond Miller, I just think they're strong against every team they play. UConn lost to them at the beginning of the season. I just think they're really tough, and especially Notre Dame without Olivia Miles. I feel like it can go either way, but I think I would take Maryland on this one.
Yeah, Citrana's really stepped up for Notre Dame, but I just think it's really hard to play without Olivia Miles with an injury so late in the season. That is so hard to
Very
adjust
true.
for, so I'm taking Maryland on that one too. Ole Miss versus Louisville.
That's a fun matchup too, especially how both teams are coming off, yes, Louisville had the win over Texas, but it was kind of a controversial one with the little drama that happened with Haley Van Lith. But Ole Miss is also coming off a huge win against Stanford. So I definitely think it'd be interesting. I would like to see Louisville take this one because I believe they have such a good squad, but they really haven't been in the rankings mix a lot this year. So, yeah, I think it should be an interesting matchup, totally.
Yeah, to think they were in the Final Four last year, I think they've really proven themselves in this tournament, but I want to see Ole Miss win, maybe because of that coach's inspirational speech, but it's really impressive what they did over Stanford, and they're coming off with so much momentum, but
Yeah.
I don't know if Haley Van Lith is going to make it easy for them. Iowa versus Colorado.
I think this one's kind of one of the easier ones.
Yeah.
Yes, Colorado they were in the rankings a little bit at the end of the season, but I just think Iowa is so dominant. Even if Colorado does perform well, it's going to be a tight matchup either way. It's Caitlin Clark. That's kind of all you got to say.
Yeah, Iowa got upset earlier in the tournament last year, but I think that almost proves that they're not going to let it happen again. She, out of all people, I think wants this so badly. She seems like a person that eats, breathes, sleeps basketball.
Yes.
So I think that team is going to be really honed in to make it to the Elite Eight. Miami versus Villanova.
I think it's also a really fun matchup with the Cavender twins and Maddie Siegrist. Maddie Siegrist hit 1,000 points in a single season, which is just mind-boggling. So I think, with the rest of the team behind Villanova, especially how, we see them playing the Big East, I think they could take this one, but I also think this is going to be a really tough matchup.
Yeah, very different types of teams, but I definitely have Villanova for this one. LSU versus Utah. That's a tough one.
That is a tough one, especially. But LSU, I think they've been thriving in this tournament more than people kind of expected since they didn't do too great against ranked teams in the regular season. But Utah's also good. I think I'm going to have to go with LSU for this one.
I'm going with LSU too. They're just so fiery.
Yes.
Flau'jae and Angel Reese, I would be afraid to step on that court. Utah's been really, really good, but I think that aggression and adrenaline that thrives off those two, that is what March is about. Virginia Tech versus Tennessee.
It's a very tough matchup we got because, UConn's got the winner, or they got to win first, but but I think both teams are they have a lot of strong players, especially like we said earlier with Virginia Tech really coming into the tournament as a 1 seed and be like, oh, okay, they're here. I think I have Virginia Tech on this one.
I think I'm going to go with Tennessee. I think they're really glad to make it this far, and I think having an upset over Virginia Tech would be really big for them. And they have Jordan Horston and Rakia Jackson, and they're very, very good players, so I'll take Tennessee on this. They're known as a program to be pretty iconic in March. Last but not least, Ohio State versus UConn. Who do you got?
I mean, I gotta go with UConn. Just the decorated players. I just feel like their bench is really getting stronger, especially as the month of March is coming in. I just feel like they have a better flow. But I think it's gonna be a good game, a fun game to watch, especially with Ohio State and the whole Dorka Juhasz kind of message. But yeah, I think it'll be fun, and I'm gonna have to take UConn.
I got UConn on this. I got UConn all the way.
All the way.
They have so much potential, and what better time to show it than March? Madness is happening here in Stores. We got the men's game on Thursday against Arkansas, and then the women's play on Saturday against Ohio State. No better place to be than the basketball capital of the world. We're going to keep you updated on all the madness. We will have people in Las Vegas for the men's tournament and in Seattle for the women's, so get excited. It's back to old times in Stores. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait for more madness to continue, and hopefully the dancing doesn't stop. I'm Mahn.
I'm Inesta.